All right, I think we are live. Welcome. Today we will be exploring the world as a consultant with University of Virginia alumni. I'd like to welcome our guests today. We have Haroun Ahmed, a cognitive solutions and business analyst consultant with IBM. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have Katie Welsh, manager at Kurtzman. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you.
We have Henry Jamison, a business analyst at McKenzie & Company. Welcome.
Thanks, Amy.
We have Mike O'Malley, Director of Instructional Design with Refi Media. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Refi Media. Thank you.
Refi Media. Great. And we also have Doug Rossbach with a management consultant. Welcome, Doug.
Thanks so much.
All right, so let's dive into some of the questions. Why did you choose a career in this industry/job field? So why did you choose a job as a consultant? Let's start off with Doug.
Okay, so Amy, actually, I started in banking with an internship, which was really the best job I could get at the time. And then I ended up in banking and moved pretty quickly through the management ranks at Citibank. And about 6 years into the career, I actually was recruited by McKenzie. They were at that point looking for experienced hires. And so they actually called me, which is a little different than what typically happens. But I was ready for the change, and consulting seemed like the perfect fit for me. So because of the ability to work on challenging problems and meet interesting people, and maybe the ability to travel a little bit. So that was my main reason.
Wonderful. And what about you, Haroun?
So actually oddly similar, except for the recruiting me part. That didn't happen. I actually started off with an internship at a bulge bracket bank. And though I enjoyed the work, it wasn't really what I wanted to get into. So afterwards, and one thing I should mention is that I work specifically for, I guess, the Watson section of IBM, which is their neuro artificial intelligence. And I actually had an academic background in cognitive science as well as finance. So I just really wanted to, because I know I want to explore that area further in the future through probably graduate opportunities. So I really wanted to get kind of involved with the technology that explores that area. So IBM kind of just made sense. And then the consultant aspect really has the cross-industry implementation of the AI. So that was why I chose where I went.
Wonderful. What about you, Henry?
So similarly, I actually started with an internship in banking as well after my third year, and jumped shipped after a great 10 weeks. And consulting gave me the opportunity to explore industries and practices. I really had no idea and still don't really know what I want to do long term. So working for McKinsey is a great place to explore consumer goods companies and travel companies and tech companies all at the same time, just switching between project to project.
Wonderful. And Katie?
A little bit different. I've never done banking. I actually was in the engineering school at UVA and did an internship in chemical engineering between my third and fourth year, and didn't really feel passionate about it. So I came back to school and recruited for consulting as well as traditional chemical engineering companies, and just decided similarly I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do long term. So consulting felt like a good opportunity for, first job post undergrad.
Wonderful. Thank you. And what about you, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I had gone to work as a salesperson. I was in sales for a while and went into a sales position at a training company. And at that training company, as a salesperson, you had to learn the products, learn the ins and outs of corporate training. So I ended up transitioning eventually from a salesperson to a training and development professional. Went back to go get my master's in education, but it all stemmed from selling a product that I learned more about, and the owners of that company were advanced degree in education. So that kind of motivated me to change my role.
Very cool. All right, great. So what were your biggest challenges in your first year of work? Let's jump in with Katie.
Sure. So I think the biggest challenges for me my first year of work was just figuring out what exactly consulting was. I had some ideas from the information sessions and talking to, alumni, but you really don't understand the dynamics of kind of being on a consulting team and interacting with the client until you're there. And so Kurtzman, their methodology is really just kind of throw you into a client setting. So I started on a Thursday in July, and I was on the client site on Monday, which was a little bit terrifying. So I think my biggest challenge my first year of work was just kind of figuring out what expectations were and what was the best way for me to leverage my background to, kind of support the team and the client.
Wonderful. What about you, Haroun?
Okay, so just as a disclaimer, this is my second full year of work, so I remember my first year pretty well. And there's kind of that twofold difficulty, at least for me, was one, getting all the consulting stuff, the client-facing focus, as well as all the stuff that has to do with consulting, and then kind of the added difficulty of the newer technology consulting and with the AI background. Part of it is that a lot of people nobody knows where this is going to go or where it's going to go solution-wise. So even asking for help or kind of the best practices weren't really that implemented. So there was that kind of twofold learning experience, which is pretty difficult, but it's really exciting and really fun.
Very cool. What about you, Henry?
Yeah, so I would echo a little bit of both of what Katie and Haroun said. I'm also in my second year of work, so remember my first year quite fondly. And on the lines of what Katie said, I think learning just what consulting is was a huge challenge for me. I mean, it's so vague in the recruiting process, and you solve cool problems, but what does that actually mean in practice, and what does that mean on the ground as an analyst? So learning that was a huge challenge over the first maybe 6 months or so. And then beyond that, just dealing with the level of ownership they give you. You're expected to drive your work stream and your challenges and problem solving 100%, even at the ground level here. And so dealing with that level of responsibility and that level of client interaction with people that could be much more senior to you, both in tenure and age, and being able to work through that was a major challenge for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, our good friend Mike, what about you? What was most challenging in your first year of work?
Sure. Well, I've been in a few different companies in different positions, so I've had a few first years. I think learning the culture is a big, taking the time to be open, talk to people, learn the culture at every organization you might work with, and then figuring out, it can be challenging, but figuring out how you can work within the processes of those companies to deliver value, like find where you fit, where you can deliver value. I think, and that takes just keeping your ears open and listening and asking a lot of questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Doug, what was your biggest challenge in your first year of work?
Yeah, I think actually Katie and Henry hit it right on the head in terms of my experience at McKenzie. I was also within a couple of weeks of getting there. I think within 2 weeks I was in a client, and unusually I was the only one there to start. So that was particularly terrifying. Trying to figure out where do I begin? How do I even begin to understand the problem I'm going to try to solve? Another one for me, two others, were managing my time because it just seemed like there just wasn't enough time to get everything done. And so having to figure out how to do that and what was important and what wasn't. And it also felt, coming from a different culture, coming out of industry, there was a whole new jargon and a bunch of frameworks I'd never heard of before. And it seemed like everybody else there was pretty familiar with them except for me. So that turned out not to be true, but it was a learning curve. And in the first couple of weeks, it could be intimidating. But in the end, very rewarding.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your feedback on all of that. So let's start off with Doug again. Can you describe a typical day of the week? Because there's so much diversity in consulting. So
sure. So I'm going to describe how today has gone so far. So this morning, I had an early morning call with a team. We were collaborating on a proposal that we're putting together for a very large client, and we basically have 1 day to turn that proposal around. So that's pretty intense. Dividing up that work, and later on this afternoon, I'm going to go back and do my piece on that. This afternoon, I have a call with a client where we're going to confer on progress on a project I'm working on. About half my day today will be consumed by doing research. That could be at this point going on the internet and trying to find things, looking for industry statistics, or maybe even doing some client interviews. And then I always try to hold about 2 or 3 hours of quiet time where I actually can step back and try to synthesize what I'm learning and try to write down some of that, getting ready ultimately for a progress review or a report back to a client on a more formal basis. So it's a lot of thinking time, and then it's a lot of collaboration.
That's really smart. I think having the downtime is really good idea too. What about you, Haroun?
So I'm sure that a lot of other people here can echo the same sentiments, but it really does depend on the client. And I'm in an odd position in that I have a lot of short projects rather than extended projects, which is typical to consulting. So my last couple of clients have been an amusement park, an automotive, which was remote, and then a client actually in Sweden. So between those three, the Sweden one's actually been particularly odd just because of the time difference. So when I'm not there, and I've actually gotten to go there a couple times, which has been really cool, a lot of it is just morning meetings, kind of, and a beginning of day connections and end of day connections. And then I have kind of the work or what I'm tasked to do that day. And then it's up to me to spread it out throughout the day. So sometimes, I can take a break in the middle of the day and then work at night. It's really irrelevant as long as I get it in between the touch points.
Very cool. So I have to ask, what amusement park? Because that sounds exciting.
I'm supposedly not supposed to say it. It's one of the big ones, and I got to go on a lot of rides, which is pretty cool.
That's so cool. All right, Henry, how would you describe a typical day of the week?
Yeah, I think the running theme here is that there probably is no typical day of the week for any consultant. Every day is so different. Right now, I'm in between two projects. I just finished up work with a dairy company, and I'm headed to work for another consumer goods company next week. So this week has been ramping down from the dairy company and ramping up for my new project. And then I got pulled in on a proposal for another company. And so the actual activities look very different every day, whether it's, client interviews, expert interviews, just, using different teammates or clients as a sounding board for different avenues or solutions you might want to pursue. One day I spent an entire half day online with a German customer service group, Google translating everything I needed to say to them, and just trying to carry on a conversation that way because we needed to see how their customer service groups work. And I spoke no German, but you got to figure that out somehow. So every day is very different, but it keeps the job exciting and definitely keeps you on your toes.
So did you get to go to Germany?
I did not. I was staffed in Mexico City for 2.5 months though, so I was living down there for a bit.
That's very cool. Katie, so what is a typical day for you?
Sure. So right now I'm actually a student in business school, so my typical day is much different than when I was a consultant. But a typical day, I guess, similar to what other people have said, you can't really describe a typical day because there really isn't one in consulting. You're guaranteed to pretty much do something different every single day. I think, from a project work standpoint, I know other people have mentioned proposal work, but likely if you're a new consultant just graduating from undergrad, you're going to be, on a project. You probably won't be involved as much BD. So some things to expect would be, potentially travel on Mondays, travel home on Thursdays. Likely the project you'll be working on will have a project plan, hopefully, and that's a really great way to tap into kind of what are the activities for the week, what are the big milestones on the project. A lot of consulting engagements have steering committees, and those weeks you can expect to kind of be busy preparing for big client checkpoints. So I think it's part of, those first couple months that we referenced earlier about kind of figuring out what consulting is, and you'll kind of get a better idea of what to expect on a day-to-day basis.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you. And Mike, anything else to add about your atypical week, apparently?
Yeah, I just echo what Henry and Catherine said. And I think you have to be agile during the weeks. Like some meetings will require you to dive into the details. Some meetings will be about big picture. Some meetings about discussing proposals. You might have an interview, interviewing people, just business discussions, or you can get really into details about the color on a page on a website or how the logo looks. So I think you just need to be agile expect to be agile during the week.
Yeah, I've designed a lot of websites for universities, so I feel you. It gets very particular as to what PMS or RGB color you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So all of you talked about some of the challenges that you had your first year. And so that's why I'm so excited about this next question of, do you have any recommendations of how someone could really prepare for and make sure that they really are successful that first year and how they can succeed in even getting a job in that industry? So we'll jump back in with Katie, if that's all right.
Sure. I think something that I found really important during the recruiting process was really making sure you're getting to know the culture and the people you're going to work with in consulting. It's actually the reason I picked Kurtzman over, other opportunities, is I really got along with the people. And in consulting, it's not a typical job where you go in at 9 and you leave at 6 and you don't interact with your coworkers outside of those times. In a lot of cases, you'll be traveling with them, spending a lot of time in very stressful situations. So I would really encourage, those interested in this industry to really spend time kind of vetting the culture and connecting with the people during the process. And then, of course, I'm sure others will mention there's always the aspect of the interview preparation and making sure you're casing to get the job.
Wonderful. What about you, Mike? Anything else to add?
I think a big believer in networking. Network with others who are in the existing positions, reach out to them, be proactive and setting up a lunch or a phone call. Maybe it's an informational interview. And then the other thing is maybe get involved in some associations in your industry. Join an association, you'll get on their calendar, you'll see what types of events and subjects and topics that are of interest to those folks in the industry. So I have joined associations. It's always been beneficial because then you see people at these different companies in the associations. So it's a good way to network and learn about the current topics.
Wonderful. It's great. And Doug, do you have any advice about how they can prepare and succeed in getting a job?
So I've actually been working with quite a few UVA students actually who are interested in getting into consulting. And I think the two things that I'm noticing that they don't do enough of are research. Back to Katie's point, really researching the company. So when they get in front of the interviewer, they already demonstrate they understand a lot about what the job is and what the company's all about. And every company is different, but there's a lot of hints about that if you take the time to go on the web and do that. And then I agree with the networking idea, Mike. I think that's huge, and I don't think UVA students take advantage of that enough.
That's great, wonderful. And Haroun.
I just want to kind of further what Doug was talking about, particularly the research aspect of things. I think that knowing kind of what the company's about and the direction it's moving in is really important. And kind of just to add on to that, I think intellectual curiosity is actually really important there as well, because not only do you have to kind of know what's going on with the company currently, you need to kind of have ideas about potential ways for it to move in. I know that other consulting companies are, I guess, very client focused, but I guess from my experience, because of the technical aspect of it, people have to want to learn about this stuff and really care, because otherwise, the hours and whatever else and kind of the little nitty picky things get really, people get really bogged down in the details too much sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wonderful. And Henry, anything else to add on how they can prepare for and succeed?
Yeah, I would first echo, what everyone else has said about the people and the culture and getting to know everyone and as much as you can through networking and research. The people wherever you work are going to determine your experience. You're with them day in and day out, especially if you're traveling as a consultant. But I'd also talk a little bit about the interview process and say two things there. One, don't under-prepare for the fit side of things. I think the fit, a lot of people freak out about case interviews and technical questions and leave the fit out. But I think being able to tell a really compelling story about your 4 years in undergrad or your past experiences growing up in high school or whatever it may be that makes you special is incredibly important to convey to interviewers when they're thinking about hiring you for a position. So that would be my first piece on the interview. And then the next piece on the technicals and the case prep. Practice makes perfect there. And to be honest, none of the math that we do at McKenzie is in the case interview is harder than middle school algebra. So to the extent that you can take a deep breath and not stress out, you're going to do well and just be sure that you're prepared for it.
Wonderful. So when describing the fit, can you give us an example of why you feel like you were a very good fit with McKenzie?
Yeah. So for me and for McKenzie, at least, it's very office specific. Each office has a different culture just based on its region and the type of work they do, and then ultimately the type of people it attracts. And so I was torn between the DC office and the Atlanta office, and ultimately chose Atlanta just because of the people that I met. I was really encouraged by the number of people that reached out, just asking to get to know me, set up time on the phone, that were willing to talk before I'd even accepted the job, and chosen Atlanta specifically. They were honestly like, Henry, let's sit down and have a chat about, what is the next best step for you, whether it's coming to McKenzie in general, and two, whether the Atlanta office is the best fit. And then as I started talking to more and more people, we had similar interests. We had similar reasons for wanting to choose the city of Atlanta. Easy access to the outdoors, a very Southern hospitality feel around the office, and things like that were really just a great fit for me. And I wouldn't have known that without talking to all these different people.
Yeah, and the food in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So if you guys are okay with it, I'd like to jump into more of like, how do you feel like your culture and your fit? Because I think that's a really good point that Henry brought in. So Haroun, why do you feel like your fit at IBM works really well?
I think particularly, I guess, within the specific office I think the fit is great. This is very much kind of a startup feel. Just there's like toys behind me. There's like stuff around, and I don't know if you guys can kind of see in the angle, but it's like I'm at working at a standing desk right now. It's very kind of a collaborative feel. There's ridiculous colors everywhere, so it's really, I guess, just idea focused. Whatever they want you to feel kind of curiosity and be intellectually driven all the time. So they kind of provide you with a good environment for that. It's pretty flexible in that same way of working remote. So I'm also really dressed up right now for the.
It was very nice.
Thank you. So it's just generally, it's really focused on the work rather than kind of the other stuff that a lot of other firms have. There's obviously that element, particularly when you're client facing as well. But I think generally there's a lot more focus on the work, the output, I guess, and the vision and what you drive forward than, I guess, the other stuff that a lot of other companies have.
Wonderful. And Katie, how do you feel about the fit at Kurtzman?
Good. I would echo what Haroun said about kind of focusing on the work. I think one of the reasons I've enjoyed working at Kurtzman is because I feel like my values align with Kurtzman's values, and kind of, dedicating yourself to the work, client first. Everyone is very passionate and has a high level of integrity. So I feel like, I found a place that, really aligns with kind of, what I want to pursue from a career standpoint and my values. So it was a good fit, and I've enjoyed it.
Wonderful. And Mike, anything to add on the fit at Reify Media?
Yeah, I mean, I'd also talk about values, and then, I spent a lot of time in large corporations, and some of them were very in-person companies where you show up every day. There little or no working remotely. Reify, on the other hand, is a very distributed workforce. We work in different places, co-working spaces, especially in the freelance world. There's a lot of co-working spaces popping up and incubators. So I'd also just say, what is your work style like? I mean, do you prefer to be in the office every day and feeding off the energy of all the people in the office, or do you kind of want to have a more distributed work environment, especially if you're working throughout the day, not just in the day, but in the evening as well? So how do you want to set it up for yourself? That's a great fit.
Wonderful. And Doug, because you are the king of your consulting,
that's right.
What type of environment do you want to cultivate where you're at?
Okay. Well, first of all, I really like my boss. Very
so humble.
Exactly. But I think it goes back to some of the things that, again, others have said. When I was making decisions around where I wanted to work, it really came down to the people, because in the end, that's who you're going to spend all day with. So I do remember with McKenzie, I had many choices in terms of office, and the people I met in Atlanta, oddly enough, a long time ago, were still great people, and they're the ones that convinced me to go there. The same was true when I joined North Highland, which is another firm. So I think in the end, it is the people that you're going to be working with every day. And Katie made a very important point, which is you're with these people like 18 hours a day. You're living with them. You're traveling with them. You're having dinner with them. And so you better like them, because there's no getting away from them. So I think that's very important.
Wonderful. So I think this is a great transition of what do you like working and what do you like most about working in this industry or job field? Let's jump in with Katie.
Sure. I think the reason I like consulting so much, there's actually two main reasons. First is the client service aspect of it. I enjoy helping people in general. And so, when you're doing consulting projects, you're helping your clients, develop strategies, design strategies, and implement them. So I've really enjoyed, especially at Kurtzman, kind of being on smaller teams and always being on the client site and having that interaction and kind of being able to see things through. I think one of the differentiators of Kurtzman as opposed to some other firms is that we are equipped to do strategy work, design, and implementation. So I've had the opportunity to kind of see projects through from the beginning initial strategy phases all the way through to when they're kind of complete and implemented, which has been really great. I think the second reason I like consulting so much is because it's very structured, and I'm a very structured person. So for everyone that enjoys, structure, organization, kind of knowing what's going on, it's a great opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you. And Henry?
Yeah, I think for me, it's two reasons also. The first being, the ability to explore so many different things. Having been here a year and a half, I've explored, I want to say, been on like 10 different projects and seen probably 10 different industries and functions crossed. So it's been really cool to just continue exploring. And the second piece would be the challenging aspect. Every project you're on is a new challenge. And every week is a new challenge in itself, because each week and each day brings its own problems. And the thing that I love about McKenzie specifically is that every time you become really, really good at something else, whether it's analytics or presentation or soft skills or interviewing, whatever it is, they throw you into a position where you're seeing something that you haven't done yet or haven't seen yet. And so you're constantly being pushed, to the limit in growth and development, which I think is really, really cool opportunity for someone just out of college.
Wonderful, thank you. What about you, Mike? What do you love about working as a consultant?
Sure. So a lot of the clients we work with are learning and education groups, and as part of that process, we're always interviewing subject matter experts to put together the training. So I'd say there's a lot of interesting people out there that know a lot of interesting things. You don't know what you don't know, so that exposes us to a lot of things that we've never heard of, just innovations going on. You've heard of like Internet of Things and deep learning and AI. I know we were talking about Watson earlier, but there's a lot going on out there, and the more people you can talk to, the better.
Very cool, thank you. And Haroun, talking about some of the innovation, what do you like about working in consulting at IBM?
So just first of all, I guess I have a deep fascination with these cognitive technologies and AI and just the direction they're moving in. And I think it's really cool that I get to be at an organization that kind of has their own centerpiece for this revolution that's coming. And then I guess the secondary aspect of that is tied to that, in that with the consulting aspect and the client focusing aspect, I'm talking to all these people and kind of trying to use this technology to help them. And because it really hasn't been done before, there's a lot of ownership that arises from that. So even me, as kind of a pretty young person, can come up with a solution that hasn't necessarily been piloted before, but really might be the one for the client. So there's that aspect of ownership, as well as ability to kind of elevate status above someone maybe beyond my tenure, just based on understanding of the technology, which is really cool.
Wonderful, thank you. And Doug, you've been a consultant expert for a while. Why do you love doing it?
So at this point, I realize I love my clients. I mean, I just really like them. And I've had very long-term clients, and they've become my friends. Their problems become my problems. And I actually enjoy the piece around business development, client relationship management. To me, comes naturally because I actually like these people, and I think it's fun working with them. And then the other thing lately I've done is a lot of mentoring for younger consultants when we're on teams. And to me, the energy I get back from them and the curiosity that they bring to the team opens up new ideas to me. So that teamwork, particularly with some of the younger team members, is really fun. So that's why I'm still doing it.
Wonderful, thank you. So any last tips or final advice for specifically University of Virginia students and working as a consultant? Let's start off with Doug again.
Advice. So getting into consulting from the college is very, very difficult. It's extremely selective, particularly the top ones. So I would say if you've got your heart on that, you really do need to, again, go back and do the research and get really prepared and begin to build a resume. How you spend your summers matters. How you spend all your time matters. And if after all of that, it doesn't work out, get a job in industry. A lot of us ended up in banking because they hire a lot of people out of school. Get a good job and then come back to it. And you'll even be more valuable when you do that.
Wonderful, thank you. What about you, Haroun?
I've just a lot of the same stuff in terms of just actually getting the position. I think that networking is really important, particularly because the major consulting firms don't really take all that many people from UVA. I think that further that point, if you are fortunate enough to get the job, I think that there's an element of relaxation that is necessary, because I know that it's kind of nerve-wracking to be on the job, particularly in your first year. But one thing that I've noticed about UVA, particularly UVA alumni, and one thing that I really enjoyed about it is that it actually really does prepare you pretty well. UVA students and alumni in general are pretty well-rounded, I guess, have the soft people skills as well as a lot of times the academic background necessary to do things. So I guess that one, I guess, is really just drive forward until you get the job, and then when you get it, you know, relax and enjoy and do a good job.
Wonderful. Henry?
Yeah, I think I would, you know, combine a little bit of both Haroun and Doug said, and that, you know, it's never too early to start thinking about what you want to do. I don't think you need to have your whole life planned out, but if consulting is interesting to you and you know that, you know, in your first or second year, you can tailor a lot of your activities both at, you know, on grounds in Charlottesville and over the summer to preparing, whether it's getting involved in associations that I think Mike mentioned earlier, just around grounds, or, you know, reaching out and starting a network. I think all of our contact info is available, so it's, you know, never too early to reach out for a quick phone call or a coffee chat. And I think most people that are involved in the mentoring service would be happy to do so. So, you know, start thinking about it early, and I think you'll be very well prepared in the long term as you move through your 4 years of undergrad.
Wonderful, thank you. And what about you, Katie?
I think similar to what other people said about kind of, you know, going into it with few expectations. You obviously want to do the research, but I think, you know, there's going to be a certain level of discovery in your first year, and kind of being open to learning what consulting is about, and gathering feedback from your colleagues, as well as just kind of bringing a level of self-awareness to the job that allows you to kind of understand how you're being perceived by your colleagues, by your clients, you know, understanding, you know, different client cultures and what they may be like, and kind of reflecting on all of those experiences to kind of further enhance what you're able to bring to the table and do on further projects.
Wonderful, thank you, Katie. And Mike, finishing it off, any final advice for UVA students working in working as a consultant?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd agree with everything everyone said. I think you really have to be proactive. I know we talked about finding a mentor, networking and reaching out to people. You have LinkedIn to help do that now. Ask to be involved in projects that are aligned to maybe your career path, but just the person has to drive that. They have to take the effort and time to reach out to people they may not know. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's usually will help you build your network and figure out what you want to do.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, all of our guests today are mentors in Virginia Alumni Mentoring. You guys are all mentors, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they all want to talk to University of Virginia students and offer help and support. So make sure that you sign up for Virginia Alumni Mentoring. Students can log into alumnimentoring.virginia.edu and connect with other alumni for additional insights about the process of starting a career in their specific field. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our very first episode, so I'm glad it worked out so well. And make sure to check out more industry and career insights on career.virginia.edu. I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.